Presonus Studio Live Mixers has had a long line of industry first, and let's just kind of go through them. The Studio Live 1642 was the first digital mixer with bidirectional Firewire interface. So, before we did it, there was no bidirectionability. You couldn't track from a mixer and then come right back into it. And so we were the first to do that with our Firewire mixers. Number two, Capture, which was the first mixer integrated multi-track recording application. Basically, every Studio Live mixer comes with Capture. And Capture is designed exclusively to work with Studio Live mixers. And think of it as a tape machine. It's just a straight up, you can record, you can do some basic editing, but then you can bring it back into the mixer. Remember that bidirectional interface theme. It's still very much alive today in the USB world with our current Series 3 mixers. But then bringing that back in and do virtual sound checks, setting your in-ears and all of that, working in a room and, before the talent gets there, you can actually, if you have part of the band there, you can run a previous worship set with the tracks of those who are not there with the band members and all. Anyway, a great integrated multi-track recording application. Then UC Surface, originally named Studio Live Remote. This was the first wireless remote mixing application and the first digital mixer control app in the App Store. So, when any of you audio guys walk around with your iPad or your laptop and you're mixing wirelessly, we were the first to create that. We invented that technology, and it's been just a real blessing for in the church world and just venues and audio engineers to be able to use that technology. That's something that Presonus actually invented. QMix UC, originally named QMix, is the first iPhone Android remote monitor mixing application. So folks who are mixing their monitors, in-ears, or wedges from their phones, again, we were the ones who invented that. And those of our users out there watching today, you've probably used both UC Surface and QMix UC, or certainly you've used one of them or the other. Studio Live Series 3 is the first fully integrated AVB ecosystem of audio products. We get asked all the time why we chose AVB over Dante. And with all due respect, we've got an Audinate guy further along in the presentation, but we made the decision that we could pack more features into our mixers by making them AVB because it's open source and we didn't have to pay licensing fees to be able to do that. Now, with that said, we are Dante capable, and we'll get to that in a second, but we can pack more features into our mixers because we've chosen an open source communication network. And we're not the only ones who are doing AVB. There are several other audio companies out there who use AVB, and we are working actively with all of them to create a standard to where each manufacturer will talk to the other, via AVB. Studio Live Series 3 64S, the first 64-channel digital mixer in the sub 10,000 price range. And it's actually less than 10,000. It's more like 7 when you talk about a fully outfitted 64S with stage boxes. So 64 channels, and this can be used if you need to go over 32, or if you're under 32 or 32 and under, you can do this in a dual layer design and have EQs for your in-ears or your monitors or a broadcaster or whatever. And then I mentioned before about Dante. The AVB D16 was the world's first AVB to Dante bridge. So just because we're AVB doesn't mean that we don't play in the Dante world. You can come out AVB and go to Dante, or if you're a Dante scenario, you can get switched over to AVB. I helped do an install at William Carey University, which is in Mississippi, and they had a big Allen and Heath D Live in their auditorium, and they wanted to be able to do streaming and multi-track recording. Well, we hooked them up with AVB D16s to go over into their 64S in their studio. So their live sound is coming from this big Allen and Heath D Live, but then their multi-track recording in the AVB world coming from the Dante world. And so that's a little bit about where we created things that are industry standards that folks use all the time. Again, Presonus Studio Live was the first to the punch. The next thing I want to talk about, which is another first to the punch, is Metro. This was created during the middle stages of the COVID world, when live events weren't happening, so audio engineers weren't working. Everyone started streaming, and I say everyone, a vast majority of folks would just pull their PA feed as their live stream. And we all know how that sounded. It wasn't very successful. Now, as someone stated earlier, you got to start where you can, and we're not going to disparage the baby steps as we move along. You can only do what you can do, and any progress is progress. And I got to see from my vantage point. By the way, I'm a veteran ministry guy. I used to mix a live national Christian broadcast. I was a church media director, a very large church in Lafayette, Louisiana, for 14 years. I'm one of the bass players at my church. I'm a worship leader. I'm very, very much still a ministry guy. And what was neat, even though I wasn't in full-time ministry when the whole COVID thing happened, it was neat for me to see from my vantage point at Presonus. At the time, I was their house of worship manager. I got to see all the church guys who were, live audio guys. All of a sudden, they were video engineers, and all of a sudden, they were trying to figure out the streaming world and mixing, for broadcast. And so, kudos to everyone who did that. I mean, it was neat to see, although it was a horrible pressure and it was kind of a rough time. I really want to say hats off to the church tech folk, because it was legitimately your time to shine, and you didn't disappoint. So anyway, going back to Metro, this was born from that. We had a lot of audio engineers who weren't working because live events weren't happening. We had a lot of people needing to stream, and their live streams were, let's call it, less than ideal. So we developed the technology that would allow you, a user, to control a Studio Live Series 3 mixer over the internet from anywhere in the world. You're going to hear a little bit later from Jake Gosselin. He's not going to talk about our thing today, but he posted a video of this about a month and a half ago, and the video on his YouTube channel is how to mix worship from 1,300 miles away. While they're showing Metro, and I've done a video that's on our YouTube channel, but I want to show you another video here that I sent to the PTZOptics guys, and we want to show this right now, and it's gonna show how this works, and it's very much in a nutshell. My video shows it a little bit more in depth. The one that's on our YouTube channel, Jake's video on his YouTube channel, is a little bit more in depth, but this is a little bit of a 1,000-foot view of how Metro works, and we're going to see it in real time of me controlling a mixer from across. I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, from across town via the internet. So if you guys can roll that. Hey, it's Richard with Presonus, and I want to show you an exciting workflow built into Universal Control. It allows remote operation of a Series 3 mixer with low latency audio monitoring from anywhere in the world. It's called Metro, and I'm here to show you how it works. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm at my house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and a coworker has this mixer set up at our office, which is about 13 miles away. Now, I'm on my computer, which we'll call the client, and what we will call the host computer is connected to the mixer via USB at the office. The first thing we need to do is establish a connection via our My Presonus accounts. I can add connections by hitting the plus sign, and then the person I've requested to add gets an email and they accept the connection. And for the sake of time, I've already done this. Now we each launch Universal Control and select Remote Access. At this point, the client, which is me, will request access to the host's mixer, and the operator there grants it. His job is done at this point. I can now monitor the mix from my computer by clicking this gear icon and choosing either an interface or my internal computer speakers. I can also choose an input for a talkback mic, which will then go to the mixer's aux outs. I click the picture of the mixer and I'm in. If I give myself front of house permission, I now have access over every parameter. I can choose to mix the main mix bus for a streaming only scenario, or I can choose an aux bus and make it stereo for a streaming mix while a local operator mixes the main bus for a live audience. But for this demo, I'll select the main mix. You can see the main mix faders moving as I bring them up on my instance of Universal Control over the internet from 13 miles away. This is possible for any remote location as long as there is a solid internet connection. Speaking of connection, I can also monitor my device stream health. I click the menu icon and go to Settings, and then I'll click UC Metro Streaming Statistics. This gives me all the data about my session, including stream health and latency. Now it bears to note here that this is the monitoring stream only. The actual mix on the console itself is instantaneous, and it's sent to its destination locally. Once the session is over, either the host or client can close the mixer window and select the user icon at the top right of the screen next to the connection time indicator. Confirm the end of the connection, and the host's mixer will disappear from the client's UC window. As you can imagine, from broadcast to training to troubleshooting, Metro changes the game on so many levels. And best of all, it's completely free. As long as the host facility has a Presonus Studio Live Series 3 mixer, you can enjoy all the benefits that this truly revolutionary remote mixing application has to offer. So, as you can see, this is something that we've developed. No one else in the world is doing this. And one of the things, and this says a lot about who Presonus is. One of the things that was at the forefront of our mind when we created this was the church world. Yes, this is for anyone to use, but we have a very, very large customer base in the house of worship world. And again, I was in that position for 3 years, and
Makeup on?
and so I got to see again how this started to play out in real time, and this is something that we feel is going to really change the game for folks. And here's the cool thing about Universal Control in this scenario is that it's a free app. As long as the host facility, and you heard me say that in the video, as long as the host facility has a Series 3 mixer, this can be done from anywhere in the world. So if you're a worship pastor or a church media director and you want to up your game on the streaming side, you're no longer bound by having to have somebody come in and do a mix from an iPad in the building or whatever. You could do this from anywhere in the world. If you're an audio engineer who happens to work on Sundays and you do it for pay, I mean, the field is wide open for you in terms of if you find, churches who will pay. You could potentially do something in every time zone on a Sunday morning, sitting in your slippers and mix people's live streams. And I think, from a kingdom point of view, sound is important, and people don't really think about it when they think in terms of video. Is one thing is how it looks, but another thing is how something sounds. If something looks good and sounds weird, then it's not good. If something, and you guys are getting a little peek at my dog Ethel there, she's really excited about the presentation. But if something looks okay but sounds great, it's still quite engaging. And so the thing is, Metro is part of Universal Control. It's a free app. So if you already have a Series 3 mixer, you can do this right now. You can do this today. So a couple of questions came in, and I just want to address them. One person said, this is exactly what we use in our church. Thank you for that. Someone said I couldn't help but notice the video is a 32S board. It was actually a 32SC. Does Metro work just as effectively with the 64S? 100%. We have noticed, for example, switching scenes. We're running live sound works on the 32S, but not the 64S. I'm just curious as the functionality. 100%. You might want to check and do. You might want to check all of your firmware. If you're having issues, you could log a support ticket. This is for Dakota, who asked that question. So anyway, that's kind of the long and the short of what I wanted to present today. But you can think of this in a lot of different scenarios where this would be effective. This is not just effective as a live streaming device. Think of it this way. If you're a worship pastor, a media director, and you've got a volunteer who does your live stream on a regular basis, well, you can load capture. You can record your services with capture. Someone just asked the question, can you hear the live mix remotely? Yes. I showed in the example that I was taking an aux mix. If you solo that aux mix bus, that is the mix that you can hear. It allows you to hear the main mix right out of the box. But if you solo the aux mix you're using, that is what you are hearing. So anyway, going back to what I was saying, if you're a media director, worship pastor, whatever, and you have someone who is your broadcast person, you can multi-track a service via capture. That person can open universal control remotely. You give them permission, like I just did at the beginning of that video. But there's also, if you have capture open on your mixer, capture will show up in universal control on that on that client device, and you can play the service from the one that was recorded and practice your mixes. So, it's one thing to mix a band, it's one thing to mix a speaker over audience mics, but it's a whole other thing to nail the transition between the two. And again, as I said at the top of my presentation, I mixed a live national Christian broadcast for 5 years. And sometimes there was a band, sometimes it was a person singing with tracks, sometimes we had an ensemble that would sing. It was always in front of a live audience. So being able to do all of that, the transitions, it wasn't enough for me to just be able to get a good band sound. I had to be able to go from the band to the audience response to a commercial break back to the person speaking on camera. And so to get your tech team to be able to practice that off-site on their own time would have immeasurable benefit. And so this begins to be something that's even more so from just a live stream thing. Also, one more thing, if you deal with an integrator, or if you are an integration company, but let's just say I'm a church and I deal with an integrator and I have a problem and I'm outside of my regular service time frame, whatever that would be, and I've got some sort of issue. Maybe I say, like something wrong. I think there might be something wrong with my mixer. I might not be happy with the sound I'm getting. Well, if I'm 3 hours away from my integrator is going to have to drive 3 hours. He's going to bill me for all of that. But if I've got the Series 3 mixer and he's got Metro, I can let him or her log into my mixer from 3 hours away, and he can say, Richard, this is your problem. You're telling me channel 7 sounds like garbage. Well, your compressor is set at -60 with a 10-to-1 ratio, and look at your EQ. You've got 2K just cranked all the way, and you've got 200 hertz dipped all the way. That's why it sounds like garbage. Let me just fix that for you right here. And so we can do that remotely. We don't have to be on site. Dusty Foster said, what mixer? This is any Presonus Series 3 mixer. So from smallest to largest, the 16R rack mixer, the 24R rack mixer, the 32R rack mixer. And from the console mixers, it is the 32SC, the 32SX, the 32S, and the 64S. So any Series 3 mixer we can do this with. So that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to chat with you about today. And so